Hello, my name is Brianna McIntyre and I'm an occupational therapist student. Today we're going to do manual muscle testing. The first one we're going to start with is elbow flexion. So elbow flexion can be in seated. The patient is going to have their humerus adducted, elbow in extension, and forearm in supination. The first thing I'm going to have to do after positioning is stabilize. I'm going to stabilize the humerus into adduction, just grabbing on to the back of his arm here, and I'm going to palpate. What you palpate is always the primary movers. In this case, it'll be the biceps. So I'm just going to use 2 fingers and palpate the muscle, the primary movers. And then what I want you to do is bring your hand and touch your shoulder. Good. Now that I feel the movement in active range of motion, I know that he's at least a 3 because he is going against gravity. So I'm going to see if he's stronger than a 3. I'm going to apply resistance. So I'm going to keep stabilizing. I'm going to grab the distal forearm. I'm going to push down, try not to let me, okay? So I'll go add resistance gradually. So I'll start at 3 plus, 4, and 5. So he would be a 5 for elbow flexion. Say that I was applying resistance and he was unable to hold, then I would change positions to eliminate gravity. So in order to do that, I'm just going to have you lay down on your back. And you're going to put your arm out here. Okay, so he's going to have his arm abducted to 90 degrees. His shoulder's going to be externally rotated. So go ahead and put your palm up that way. Perfect. And again, I'm going to stabilize the humerus. So I'm going to do that by putting my hand underneath the table in his humerus. And this way, it is parallel to the floor, so gravity has been eliminated. The next thing I'm going to do is stabilize, have my hand here, and again, palpate. So I'm going to just hold my fingers here. Go ahead and see if you can touch your shoulder again. Good. And go ahead and bring it back down. So I know at this point, we're going to have a little bit more strength. If he did not, say that he was unable to get up, I would apply minimal resistance to see if he can at least be a 2 plus. So 2 plus minimal resistance. I'm going to keep stabilizing. Go ahead and try to bring your hand back to your shoulder. And if he could do that full range against a minimal resistance, it would be 2 plus. And then the full range without gravity, what you did first, is a 2. And then I'll kind of see in this gravity eliminated plane if it was any less than that, 2 minus, and then of course 1 and 0 flaccid, no movement. Moving on to elbow extension in the normal range with gravity, we're going to have the patient in prone. The next thing we're going to do is his arm abducted to 90 degrees, elbow at 90 degrees. And the forearm is going to be in a neutral position perpendicular to the floor. Again, I'm going to stabilize the humerus, so I'm just going to put my hand in between the table and his arm. Go ahead and relax. And I'm going to palpate the triceps this time. So I'm going to just grab on here. Okay, go ahead and straighten your arm. Good. So I know at least he's a 3. You can go ahead and relax. So now that I observe that, I'm going to add the resistance. So go ahead and bring your arm back up. And I want you to try to bend your elbow. Yep. So I gradually, 3 plus, 4, and he would be a 5. Say that he was unable to stand any resistance, and I would change the positioning to have gravity eliminated. In order to do that, I would put him in supine, so go ahead and go on your back. And just for ease of video, we're going to do the other arm here. So he's going to be in supine, again, arm abducted to 90, and then the external rotation. So put your hand like that. Perfect. Next, I'm going to stabilize. So the same part, I'm going to stabilize in between the table and the humerus and palpate. So, oh, you're going to start here actually. Do an extension. Okay, go ahead and straighten your arm. Good. So I actually can feel it with my stabilizing arm, the triceps contracting at the same time I stabilize. So I observe that with gravity eliminated. So I'm going to add minimal resistance to see if you can do the same thing. Let's go ahead and bring it back up. And I want you to try to straighten your elbow again. So with minimal resistance, he's still able to do it. That would make him a 2+. With the gravity eliminated in that first one, he would be a 2. And then I would see if you had any range to make a 2-. 1 being just a trace amount from palpation, and 0 being flaccid. The next muscle group we're going to be testing is for supination. So we always start with positioning. I'm going to have my patient seated, the humerus adducted, elbow at 90 degrees, and we're going to start in pronation for supination. So we're going to have your palm facing down. So the next thing I'm going to do is stabilize. So go ahead and just bring your arm back in. Yep, just like that. I'm going to stabilize the humerus and adduction, and for this one you can either palpate the supinators or the bicep. In this case, I'm going to palpate the bicep. So in biceps, go ahead and try to do the action of flipping your hand upward. Perfect. So I know at least he's a 3 at this point, that he's able to do full range against gravity. Now I'm going to resist. So I'm going to keep my hand stabilizing the humerus, and I'm actually going to switch hands just out more resistance, and you're going to try to flip your hand back over. Good. So I can tell right away that he's going to be a 5, so I resisted him going back into pronation. Those are the supinator muscles, by holding onto the distal forearm. If he was a little bit weaker and he was unable to do it against gravity, I would eliminate gravity. To change that position, we need a table. Okay. Again, start with position. So using a table, the shoulder is going to be flexed to 90, the elbow is going to be flexed at 90, and the hand is going to start in pronation. And that's going to be perpendicular to the floor. So I'm actually going to have you this way, supination this way. Okay. So now that this is perpendicular to the floor, we have eliminated gravity, and I'm once again going to stabilize. So I'm actually going to do just like we're doing on the table. I'm going to stabilize the humerus here, and then let's see if you can just do the motion again of flipping your hand over. Good. So I felt the palpation of the bicep once again, and I'm going to add minimal resistance with gravity eliminated. So go ahead and bring your arm back here and bring it back. Good. So minimal resistance, gravity eliminated, he's going to get a 2+. If I then do full, which he was able to do, it's going to be a 2, and then 2- if he was unable to do the full, 1 being minimal palpation, I can actually feel the muscle movement, and 0 is going to be flaccid. The next test we're going to do is pronation. So very similar to the supination, we're going to be in position, patient sitting, humerus adducted, and elbow at 90 degrees, and this time we're going to be starting in supination instead of pronation. So I'm going to stabilize again the humerus in adduction, and I'm going to palpate. This time I'm going to be palpating the pronator teres. So that's actually going to be over here. We're going towards the contraction of the muscle. Go ahead and put your palm facing down. Good. So I'm able to feel the muscle contraction. We know at least it's a 3 against gravity. I'm going to test if he's stronger than that. So I'm going to try to resist while keeping this stabilized. So I'm just going to grab here, and I want you to try to get your hand back forward. Good. So I'll go gradually, 3+, 4, and he is a 5. So if he was a little bit weaker and he couldn't stand the resistance, or he wasn't able to do it against gravity, I would change positioning. So again, you can go ahead and put your arm up here. This will be for testing of 3+ to 0. The positioning is patient and sitting, shoulder at 90 degrees, elbow at 90 degrees, and he's going to be in supination, forearm in supination. I'm again going to stabilize the humerus proximal to the elbow, and I'm just first going to see by palpating if he's able to do the movement. So he's in supination. Now I want you to see if you're able to move your wrist the other way. Yep, perfect. So now I'm going to add minimal resistance to see if he is a 2+. So go ahead and bring your hand back to here, and bring it this way. Yep. So I'm going to apply minimal resistance. Go ahead and try to bring your arm back, your hand. Perfect, and very strong. In the case it's a little bit weaker, it would be a little bit harder against the minimal resistance. The movement that he did first is going to be a 2, and then 2-. He's unable to do the full movement in gravity eliminated, and then a 1. It's just going to be a trace on the palpation, and 0 being flaccid. He's unable to do the movement. Moving on to shoulder flexion, again for positioning, the patient is going to be seated. I'm going to have his shoulder adducted. His elbow is going to be relaxed, and then his forearm is going to be in pronation. For stabilization, I'm going to stabilize the trunk here, so I'm just going to grab onto the trap area. Palpation right here will be the anterior deltoid. So of the 3 here, the anterior one is the front, so I'm actually just going to touch the front of his shoulder here. The next thing I want you to do is you're keeping your palm facing down here. I want you to try to raise your arm up only to about eye level. Do not go farther than that. Good. There we go. Good. Okay. So I know that at least he's going to be a 3. I'm going to add resistance. I'm going to remain stabilizing, and I'm going to grab the distal humerus. I don't want to go below the elbow, causing you damage to the next joint down. So I'm gradually going to apply resistance. Don't let me push down. I'm going to go to 3+, 4, and 5. If he was to break in one of those, I would then assess at a different plane, doing gravity eliminated. You can relax. For that, I'm going to have you laying on your side, so your head that way. Perfect. So shoulder is going to be adducted, the elbow, again, relaxed in extension, and then the pronation. So this way it's parallel to the floor and gravity has been eliminated. Actually come over here so I can stabilize a little bit better. So stabilization, everything's going to be the same as before. I'm going to stabilize the trunk. I'm going to palpate the anterior deltoid. So go ahead and do that same movement, but only to about right here. Good. You're actually going to keep your forearm that way. Good. Okay. If he was able to tolerate that, gravity eliminated, that's going to be a 2. I'm going to assess if he's going to be a 2+. I'm going to apply minimal resistance. Again, distal humerus. Don't let me push down. And again, he's a little bit stronger. If it was to break, then I would also see what else he was able to do. If it's less than half on for 2, gravity eliminated. If he was able, you can relax. If he was unable to move, I would just palpate the anterior deltoid to see if there's any muscle contraction, and then of course 0. He is unable to move at all. The next movement is going to be shoulder extension. So first, when performing a positioning, I'm going to have my patient laying in prone. The humerus is going to be adducted. The elbow is going to be in a relaxed position, and the forearm is going to be in pronation. So put your palm facing down. Yep. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is stabilize. This time I'm going to, again, stabilize the trunk, and I'm going to palpate. For this movement, it's going to be the teres major. The teres major is located just under the armpit onto the trunk. So first, what I want you to do is bring your arm back. Go ahead and raise your arm up. You're going to keep your your palm facing down now. Good. Bring your arm up. Good. I'm able to palpate. I can feel the muscle contracting. He's at least going to be a 3 and apply resistance. So don't let me, on the distal humerus, so don't let me push it. Coming gradually, 3 plus, 4, and 5. Good, relax. So I know that he's going to be at least a 5. If he were to break at any type of resistance, unable to tolerate it, I would change position. So go ahead and lay on your side. The same positioning for the upper extremity. He is going to have his humerus adducted, elbow in a relaxed position, and pronation. I'm going to palpate. Again, it's going to be the teres major, so I'm just the field adjuster's armpit on the trunk, on the posterior side. So you're going to do that same movement. You're going to try to bring your arm back this way. Yep. Good. So I know he's at least a 2. I'm going to apply minimal resistance to see if he's the 2 plus. So I'm just going to push, try to bring your arm back to your side. And again. And just a correction to always to be proximal, so I'm going to do the distal humerus for any type of resistance. You never want a joint in between. If he was unable to tolerate any resistance or unable to do the full motion with gravity eliminated, then he would be into the 2 minus. 1 just being a trace that I can palpate that teres major and feel palpation or contraction, and then 0 being no movement, no muscle contraction. The next movement is going to be shoulder abduction. So the first thing to do is get the patient in positioning. He's going to be seated. Go ahead and sit on the edge of the seat for me. The elbow is going to be relaxed and the forearm is going to be in neutral. So you're going to put your arm just relaxed down, just like that. And then your palm is also always going to be facing your leg. Okay, the next thing we're going to be doing is stabilization. So I'm going to be stabilizing the trunk for shoulder abduction, and where I'm going to palpate is going to be the middle deltoid. So anterior before was up here, and it's just going to be below the acromion process. So in order to find that, I'm going to feel the clavicle and the superior border of the scapula. I'm going to come down to this point, the acromion process, and then just on that same level is going to be the middle deltoid. So what I have you do is you're going to bring your arm out to the side only until it's straight, so don't go above your head. So go ahead and move your arm up. Perfect. So I'm able to feel the muscle contraction, the middle deltoid. I observe the movement at a 3, so I'm going to apply resistance while remaining stabilizing his trunk. So I'm going to do this at the distal humerus. Okay, don't let me push down. So I'm going to gradually push down, 3 plus, 4, and 5. Good. So he would be 5 out of 5 for shoulder abduction. If he was unable to tolerate any resistance against the gravity, I would eliminate the gravity. In order to do that, I'm going to put the patient in supine. So go ahead and lay on your back. The shoulder is going to be adducted. Again, just for ease of video, I'm going to be doing the other hand to clearly show the action. So shoulder is going to be adducted. It's going to be the same, elbow and relaxed here, and then neutral position for the forearm. This way that it is parallel to the floor and gravity is eliminated. I'm going to stabilize the same area over here at the trunk, and to find the acromion process, I'm again going to feel the superior border of the scapula and the clavicle, and then just at that same line is going to be the middle deltoid. So while stabilizing, palpating, I want you to do that same movement, so you're just going to bring your arm out. This one, bring it out. Good. So that will be a 2, gravity eliminated. I'm going to see if you can stand any resistance. So I'm going to keep stabilizing. Distal humerus, I'm going to apply minimal resistance. If you can tolerate that, good. That will be a 2 plus. 2 minus is gravity eliminated. he's unable to do the full range. Again, the 1 being a trace amount and 0 being no muscle contraction. The next movement is going to be shoulder external and internal rotation. For the first one, we're going to be doing 5 to 2 plus, so it's going to be against gravity. Starting with positioning, the patient is going to be in a prone position. The shoulder is going to be abducted 90 degrees. The elbow is also going to be at 90 degrees, and the forearm in neutral, just hanging over the edge. For stabilization, I'm going to be stabilizing the distal humerus. And palpation for external rotation is going to be teres minor. In order to find that, it's actually the axillary border of the scapula. So I'm just going to feel his scapula here, see where the axillary or armpit border is. And this one's a little bit harder to find, so I'm actually have you probably perform this movement a couple of times so I can make sure I got it. So what you're going to do is this movement here. So you're going to bring your, we're going to start with external rotation. So you're going to put it there. Okay, I'm going to stabilize and palpate at the same time. First is going to go that way. Yep. Okay, go ahead and bring your arm up. So external rotation, I found the muscle here, and he's able to do a 3. That is against gravity, full range. Now I'm going to apply resistance. I'm going to take my hand off the palpating, apply resistance to the distal forearm, and what I'm going to do is have you not let me push your arm back to where it was before. So I'll gradually apply resistance. I'm going to do 3 plus, 4, and 5. So he would be a 5 for external rotation. For internal rotation, I'm going to keep him in the same positioning for gravity, against gravity. So he's going to have his arm in this position here. The same, the shoulder abducted to 90, elbow flexed to 90 degrees, forearm in mid position, hanging over the table. The only difference here is that the teres major is going to be the primary mover here, so that's what I'm going to be palpating for. So stabilization is going to be the same. It's going to be here on the humerus. It's going to be very close to where it was before. So this time what I want you to do is you're going to bring your arm back. Okay, go ahead. Good. Okay, you can relax. Okay. So of course I would be doing range of motion first to see what he was in normal range. So I'm actually just going to see how far he can go here. Okay. Okay. So again, go ahead and go into this movement again. Push your arm back. Okay. Let me see if you can do this. So you're going to hold your arm out and you're going to just push like your palm is facing up. Like that. Yes, yes. Okay. I wasn't sure if you just weren't able to do it. Okay, go ahead. Good. So I can see his hand going back. I'm going to remain stabilizing and apply pressure. So go in gradually 3 plus, 4, and 5. Good. If he was unable to tolerate any resistance, I would then eliminate gravity. So that positioning is going to be sitting. So you can go ahead and sit on the edge here again. The shoulder is going to be adducted. Elbow is going to be at 90 degrees and forearm in neutral. And again, ease of video, just doing the other arm. Okay, we're going to start with external rotation, and this will be measuring the 2 plus to 0. So now that we have positioning, sitting, adduction, 90 degrees, forearm in neutral, I'm going to do the stabilization. So again, stabilizing the humerus. You don't want to impede any of the movement. I'm just going to come back over here so I'm not in his way. So external rotation is going to be out this way, and it's going to be the teres minor I'm palpating for. So stabilize and palpate. Okay, this time you're going to come out this way. So I'm going to come this. Yep, that movement as far as you can. Perfect. So I can feel his muscles contracting, and next I'm going to apply resistance. So I'm going to keep stabilizing here at the humerus. Okay, I want you to try to bring your arm back in. So 3 plus, 4, and 5. Good. So he would be at a 5. We would do the same thing for internal rotation. Again, this is for the 2 plus to 0. So that was minimal resistance applied. If, again, he was unable to make the full movement, he would be into the 2 range. He made the full one of gravity eliminated. He's going to be the 2 minus, unable to get all the way there. And then no movement going into the 1 and 0. Same thing for internal rotation, gravity eliminated. I'm going to stabilize. I'm going to feel for the teres major. So this time you're going to bring your palm towards your belly. And he's able to do it gravity eliminated, full range. That's going to be a 2 plus. If I was to apply minimal resistance, again, blocking here, try to bring your arm back. Good. And he was able to do minimal resistance, you'd be a 2 plus. If you gravity eliminated, wasn't able to go all the way, it would be a 2 minus. And if there was just a trace movement, 1, no movement, it would be a 0. The remaining for manual muscle testing is going to need a table. So I have the patient in a new position. The first one that we are going to start with is wrist extension with radial deviation. So the first step is positioning. He is already in seated. We're going to have a humerus a little more abducted, and the elbow in flexion, and the wrist in the forearm in pronation. Wrist at neutral, digits relaxed. So for the stabilization, I'm going to stabilize just proximally to the wrist on the distal forearm. Then I'm going to palpate. The tendons here that I'm actually going to palpate are the flexor carpi radialis longus and brevis. The way to find that is to find the second and third metacarpal. You can see these bony landmarks very easily. And I'm just going to follow those tendons down on the dorsal side to the base of the wrist, and I'm going to be able to feel those 2 tendons there. Just to make sure that I found those primary movers, when he does the action, I'm going to feel the contraction. So then I'm going to observe the movement. So the movement that you're going to do is you're going to lift up your wrist and you're going to move it toward. You can do one solid movement towards your thumb and up. Okay, go ahead. Good. So I know already that he's at least a 3 by my observation. That's going to be with gravity, full range of motion. I'm going to see now if he is stronger than a 3, so I'm going to apply resistance. So I'm going to keep my hand in the stabilization. I'm going to hold the ulnar side to resist him from going back to the original position. So go ahead and try to move your hand back. So I'm going to gradually push 3 plus 4 and 5. So he would be a 5. If he was unable to stand to any of the resistance, then I would eliminate gravity. So in order to do that, I would keep him in the same position, but this time I'm going to put his forearm in neutral on the ulnar side. So everything else is the same. I'm going to stabilize on the distal forearm just proximally to the wrist, and I'm going to palpate the flexor carpi radialis longus and brevis again on the second and third metacarpal. I'm just going to follow that down to the base of the wrist. Okay, you're going to do that same movement, so up and to the side. Good. And of course we know that he has typical strength. If he was unable to do that, or before I was kind of questioning the 2 plus, I would be able to apply resistance with gravity eliminated. So in order to do that, I would keep stabilization, and then what I'm asking you to do is just try to put your arm back in starting position. Good. And if he was able to perform that minimal resistance, I'll call it a 2+. And then we saw he had the full range of motion, gravity eliminated, so that would be 2. And then the 2- that he was unable to do the motion. 1 is that there's just a trace movement, so during the palpation step, I would just be able to feel the muscle contraction, and then 0 is no muscle contraction at all. So the next one I'm going to do is radial deviation with wrist flexion this time. Very similar position. He's going to stay in the position he is here. The elbow back in flexion. Forearm this time is going to be supinated and wrist neutral, digits relaxed. So now I'm going to stabilize. Very similar. I'm going to stabilize just approximately to the wrist on the distal forearm. And the palpation for this one is going to be the flexor carpi radialis, or the FCR. In order to find that, you have to look on the dorsal side. So I'm actually going to flip your hand over. You're going to find the second metacarpal. And I'm going to flip his hand back over to the volar side and be able to palpate down that tendon just below the thumb on the base of the wrist and just below the femur eminence. So stabilizing, I'm palpating the primary mover, which is the flexor carpi radialis. This time you're going to go towards your thumb, but you're flexing. So you're going up and towards your thumb. Go ahead. Good. So I can feel the primary mover very easily. I know at least he's a 3 because he's able to perform the activity. If he was not, say if he was a 3-, he would have less than normal, but more than half. And then the 2+ is when I would start to kind of question if I should do gravity eliminated. So the next thing I'm going to do is resistance to see if he's higher than a 3. So I'm going to, it's a little awkward positioning here. I'm actually just going to move myself a little bit. And again, I'm going to stabilize. And you're going to try to go back to that starting position. So gradually, 3+, 4, and 5. So he would be a 5. So again, if I was questioning the 2+ range, minimal assistance, gravity eliminated, I would eliminate gravity. In order to do that, it's very similar to the extension. I'm going to have him in sitting, mid position, on the ulnar border, wrist and neutral. For stabilization, same, except this time I'm going to go in between his arm and the table. So I'm just going to stabilize the proximal wrist between the table to allow for easier movement. So I'm going to palpate the same. It's going to be just, you only can see on the dorsal side from the second metacarpal. You're going to go to the volar side, and I'm going to follow that down to the base of the wrist. I'm going to be able to feel that flexor carpi radialis. Okay, so now you're going to do that same movement. So you're going to bend your wrist towards your thumb. Bend it. This way, bend it. So it's going to look like this. Yes. Perfect. So that would be at least a 2, gravity eliminated, full range of motion. Again, if I was questioning the 2+, I would apply minimum resistance. So I'm going to have you try to get in that starting position again. And again, he has very good strength. If he was able to do that minimal resistance, I would grade it a 2+. If he was unable to, I would go into the 2-, and if there was just a trace during palpation, it would be a 1, and then no muscle contraction would be a 0. Okay. For the remaining, we are going to do the manual muscle testing on the IP flexions, MC flexion, PIP flexion, and DIP flexion. We are going to start with positioning with the MCP flexion. So forearm, similar to the previous motions, is going to be resting on the table. The hand, the forearm is going to be in supination, and the wrist is going to be neutral. So next I'm going to stabilize. For this stabilization, I want to make sure that the wrist doesn't move as well. So I'm going to put my hand over the palm and the wrist. So what I'm going to palpate for MCP flexion is the first dorsal intercosseus muscle. And the only way to find that is actually going to be on the dorsal side. So what I'm going to do is look on the dorsal side. You can just put your in between the second and third MCPs, so you can see very easy bony landmarks. I'm going to find right in between there on the dorsal side and then reapply the patient in the correct position. So palpating while stabilization, and your fingers can just be relaxed. What I want you to do, we're going to do this joint here. You're going to try to bend this big joint here. So go ahead. Good. I can easily feel the contraction. So now I know at least that he's a 3, and we're just going to be testing the second digit at this time. So now that I know the palpation's there, I'm going to remain stabilizing, and I have finished observing. I'm going to now apply resistance. For this one, I'm going to just go in between the MCP and the PIP and gradually again apply resistance. So I'm going to try to push your finger down, try not to let me. So 3 plus 4, and he's definitely a 5. So I would grade him a 5. If he was unable to do it against resistance, or maybe I was questioning in the 2 plus range, I would just grade it as so, just because we're doing normal for all this, all the flexion movements. So the next is the PIP flexion. Exact same positioning, we're going to keep here. Very easy to move on to the next one. The only thing that changes is where we're stabilizing. So this time I'm actually going to stabilize here on the MCP. Since we don't want the MCP to compensate for that movement, we want to block this muscle, or block this joint, excuse me. So what I'm going to palpate for this is the flexor digitorum superficialis. In order to find that, I'm going to find on the proximal phalanx. And that is going to be just on the volar side. So very easy to find on that one. Okay, so I'm going to use a 3-jaw chuck pattern for this one just to make sure that I'm blocking the joint correctly. And, okay, just relax your hand. Okay, so now that I already have palpation and stabilization, I can do that at the same time for these next 2. You can go ahead and this joint here, you're just going to try to flex your finger. Good. And I can already feel that it's, and observe, excuse me, that it's a 3, and I'm going to apply resistance. So again, I'm just going to remain stabilizing and go ahead and try to put your finger back straight. So 3 plus 4 and 5. So he would be a 5 out of 5. If I was questioning the strength again, this is the only plane that we're going to be performing in. For the DIP, very similar. Positioning is going to remain the same. The stabilizing this time is going to be in the middle phalanx. So right here, I'm going to kind of keep my finger in the same spot, the 3-jaw chuck. just to ensure that this PIP or MCP is not moving as well. So this time we're just moving the tip of your finger. Not yet, sorry. So the belly of the muscle for the flexor digitorum profundus for the PIP is going to be palpable at the same time of stabilization. So I'm going to keep my hands the same. Next, I'm going to observe. So you can kind of just relax, yeah. Okay, so now you're just going to try to move that tip of your finger. Perfect. So during this, I can apply resistance now that I observe that he has full range at the 3 out of 5 level. Okay, go ahead and straighten out the tip of your finger again. So again, 3 plus 4 and 5. And then again, he has typical strength. I would be able to grade in this plane whether it was that 3 plus, or if he was to break before that, we would go into the 3 minus if he had less than normal or more than half of the range of motion. That completes the manual muscle testing. Thank you so much for your time.